Who's the instructor?
It's over at Berkeley.
Okay. What's the movie?
It was Taxi by Panahi.
Oh, Panahi. Yeah. Because of the current social and political climate of the country, most of the films that come out of Iran or are produced in Iran, they have very strong and powerful elements of just social stuff and political elements that you as the audience sitting back and watching kind of just weighs heavily on you after a while. And I think something just happens to your psyche when you live in an environment that's somewhat hostile and you don't really have the power to change much of anything. You know. So, but they make some really, really good movies. They spend very little money and they make like a 3-hour movie and it's very impactful. So, yeah. Have you guys watched The Matrix yet? You have?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Who said yeah?
Classic.
Yeah. Huh. And you guys have talked about it?
Like with my friends. Oh, it's
In the classroom, yeah.
No. This is like an international film class.
Oh, international, okay.
It's all non-American films.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you're watching, like, let's say I watched Dodge Bullet, do you think it's important to like research like cultural like that one has like a lot of cultural references. So you can
Which one? The Matrix?
no Dodge Bullet, the German film.
Okay.
So like because when I watched it, I did research on like cultural references. I think it's important like because I don't live in Germany, so I don't know any of that kind of thing. It's important to research cultural references.
If the movie is interesting for you, then
I would recommend watching it. I was crying on the end.
if the movie is interesting to you and for you, that interest will carry you to the bookstore to kind of figure out where this movie came from, why and how and who. Yeah.
I watched it and I watched research cultural references on again. It's so much more different.
Yeah.
So much better. So I would recommend if you're going to watch a war film, research cultural references.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Erica. Okay. Anyone else? Markel? Anything? Come back to you?
So before you've spoken about how it's good to partake in some of the deadly sins, like it's good to be lustful, it's good to be like greedy, it's good to have pride. So do you think it becomes then an issue if a society as a whole versus the individuals chooses to follow sort of those morals? Or do you think there's that should be something reserved for the individual versus the society?
Well, society as a whole will never follow anything uniformly. It's like just because you enjoy football, it doesn't mean like 400 million people in America are going to enjoy football. I think people have different interests, people have different capacities, different passions for different things. But one of the fundamental aspects of any movement that takes place for the human being, one of, again, the most powerful elements is lust. And lust means you see something and there is this passion that just overcomes you. Now, it could be a lust for, say, understanding your relationship. It could be lust for sex. It could be lust for drinking. There are lots of things out there that inspire various desires. And I suppose at that point, what comes forth is the value judgment. What is it good to be lustful after? You're a young man, and let's just say you're heterosexual, you're going to find yourself attracted to a lot of different women. Okay. Now, it may be that you may lust after a woman who comes from a very broken background, or you may be lustful after a woman who comes from a relatively good and solid background. And let's just say that your degree of lust towards the person who comes from a relatively difficult background is slightly more than the person who rests on a very solid environment. Your mom may come and tell you she's not good for you, the broken one, and she's making a value judgment. What lust basically does is like a volcano of pleasure. It consumes you. You're basically in the moment. That's what lust does. It's all consuming. And so you become blind. It's kind of like being intoxicated, where you're told not to sit behind the wheel and drive because there's a good chance you may get into an accident or you may run over someone. So lust is very much like that, depending again on its intensity, that you become drunk by this particular emotion and what it does to your psyche. Now, when you're blind by any emotion, whether it's anger, and all of us in this class have been angry, right? All of us in this class have kind of fallen in love that's been founded on lust. Time passes, you sober up, you throw up, if you will, and you say to yourself, I'm never going to drink again, or I'm never going to smoke again, I'm never going to go out with someone who has these particular qualities. And lo and behold, 2 years pass by, and before you know it, you're again with the same person in a different body, right? And so your mom comes to you and says, the person who has a kind of a broken background is no good for you. And you kind of look at your mom and say, Mom, why do you make a judgment? You should see the beam in your own eye as opposed to the speck in her eye. So you make all these ridiculous comments from the New Testament, from Karl Marx and all those people, making your mom feel bad and creating this illusion that you understand more than your mom. So lust is good. It just depends what you're after. Anger is good. Anger is really, really, really good. Consider for a moment that what this current administration is doing to all those people who are on healthcare, Medicare. They're retired. They don't really make much money. Not much money really comes in. And the government takes care of them. Well, if you were to be like Jesus Christ, if you want to take my health care, I will give you my car as well. Well, that's really stupid. It's good to be angry, because anger in some ways is an indication of you seeking justice. I've worked for this company for like 30 years. I've paid my dues. I've given my taxes to this country, and the least you guys can do at the age of 70 or 80 is take care of me. And so maybe by the time you're 60 or 70 or 80, you just really don't have much energy to be angry. But anger is good. Anger at a 2-year-old, probably not so much. What you have in the anger towards the 2-year-old is that you try to kind of exercise some power, discipline, read the book, take the shower, do the bathroom, clean your room. And so irritation, agitation, frustration eventually become angry. And depending on your temperament, depending on how abusive your father has been towards you, you may kind of just become very physical with your son. That's a 2-year-old. That particular anger creates a good amount of shame and guilt inside you later on. The anger that you may rise up and fight for justice and even lose your own job, though initially it may create a good amount of pain inside you, 5 years down the line, you're going to look back and say, man, I got angry. I lost my job. I created all these like mass movements for my fellow students. I'm very proud. So there are certain things you become angry about that ultimately agitate you, shame you. And there are certain forms of anger that just makes you very, very proud of what you have done. Gluttony, or let's just say greed. Greed is really, 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 really good. In a country such as this, where at any time your job could be canned, there is nothing wrong with you being greedy for money or having an extra fridge in a garage. I mean, imagine that you have arthritis. It's difficult for you to walk around, or you're too old to kind of drive around, okay? And at a certain point in your life, you say, you know what, I don't want to go out too much. So what you do is you buy a fridge, and even though you have 2 loaves of bread in your fridge in the kitchen, you have 5 loaves of bread in the freezer in the garage. Well, that's great. It saves you time. It saves you irritation. You can, anytime you run out of bread, just walk into the garage, grab yourself some bread, and feed yourself. There are certain types of greed that are just bad, in the sense that I mean, consider the Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and Elon Musk, Trump's inauguration. And in that particular day, the 3 of them made over $40 billion just because they said hello to Trump, and Trump was able to open some doors for them. Given that about 40% of the American population live under the poverty line, that sort of a greed, where you just don't care about the suffering of other people, that's just a bad greed to have. So it really depends on the context. It depends how that greed comes about and how it's being used. Pope Gregory, who came up with the 7 deadly sins, first he's the Pope. He's a Catholic. He's very religious. So everything that's associated with human life, physical life, is deemed to be negative or bad. Sex is bad. Lusting after a man or a woman is bad. Having money is bad, because what money does is it allows you to plan for your future. But you may not have a future because your life lives in the hands of God. If God at this second realizes that your life means nothing and he wants to take it, well, he's going to take it, right? So what you should do is just live in the moment, always have the humility to know that you may really not have a future. But what money does, it says, you know what, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to make money, I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to buy a wife, I'm going to buy a couple of kids, I'm going to buy some friendships, and I'll live to be 90 or 100. In some ways, you kind of behave like Job, in the sense that you're making all these judgments about yourself and about your life and about your future, when in fact, you have no power to do so. So you sit yourself on the throne of God, and you say, you know what? I think I know what's good for me. Okay. But we are not religious people, and this is a secular environment. Everything is about just tables and chairs. It's very meaty. It's very tactile, very fleshy. In a culture such as this, where, again, divorce rate is almost 60%, people are lonely and depressed, you should lust after a companionship. You should be greedy and profoundly selfish, because no one's out there taking care of you. No one is going to take care of you, because everybody has their own problem. And you should be really, really angry when someone crosses certain lines with you. And I think you should take the saying of Jesus very, 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 very seriously. When in Rome, do as Romans do. Or, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and give to God what belongs to God. There is a part of you, your life, that lives in America. What is America? It's a vulturous environment. It's capitalism. If you're not careful, you will lose what little life you have. So when you wake up in the morning, you're going to say to yourself, you know what, from 9 to 5, I live in the city. I work in the city. I need to make money, food, shelter, clothing. This is the land of Caesar. If Caesar lies, you lie. If Caesar cheats, you cheat. If Caesar is greedy, you become greedy. But at a certain point, you need to have the awareness that, like at 5 o'clock, you say, okay, you know what? I am done with the world of Caesar. I'm going to go home now. When at home, you take a shower. And it's kind of your own unique form of baptism, where you say, I'm going to just get rid of all the awful pieces of advertisement Oakland has imprinted on my brain. I'm just going to shower it away. That's my baptism. And then I'm going to sit and read a good book, listen to good music, write an essay that comes from my soul, perhaps, or talk to my friends about something that's meaningful. So, again, the point I'm trying to make is have fun with these ideas. Just because some pope said ABCD doesn't mean it's just ABCD. Does that? Yeah. The other thing about sin, in its original definition, it simply means missing the mark. That's what it means, missing the mark. And the truth is, we're the sort of animals who don't come with a manual. It takes us a long time to figure things out. And by the time you figure anything out, I mean, when I started building, like bathrooms and kitchens and like houses or rooms, I can't tell you how much money and time and energy I wasted because I just didn't know. Every cut I made, I sinned. It was a wrong measurement. I didn't know how to use a nail gun properly. And if I did, it was the wrong nail gun and the wrong nail degree, you know. And so it took me a while to sin again and again and again and again and be punished by my own mistakes because I'm a novice. And then when I became more proficient, I realized I can sin no more, at least when it comes to cutting lumber. So sinning is part of what it means to be human. You're going to make a lot of mistakes in finding a suitable companion for yourself. You're going to take a lot of lousy classes. You're going to have a lot of lousy conversations. You're going to just do a lot of crappy things in life. And when you catch yourself, and that's baptism through fire. In other words, you catch yourself having made all these mistakes, and then you suffer grief, okay? You begin to self-blame. How could I be so stupid? You know, we have this friend. He's been at this, we own a car wash, as you guys know, in Roseville. My father does. He's Mexican. And he's been there for, I think, 40 years. I don't know if his status is legal or not. I doubt. He's a really, really good man, you know. And every like couple days I call him and I say, you know, so-and-so, thank you for doing this stuff. Just once you're done, go home. Don't go for a walk, you know, and if you want to go shopping, go after like 5 or 6 p.m. So the immigration officers are not around, you know. Now imagine one night he kind of forgets and becomes a bit casual and walks a safe way and gets caught and gets deported. Well, he's been here for 40 years. It's the only place he knows. You know? And what is he going to go do once he goes back? Nothing. It's going to take him another 20, 30, 40 years to feel at home in Mexico. A place he hasn't visited for like 30 years. And then once he's deported, once on the plane or some cell in Texas, he's going to say, man, I should have listened. I was so stupid. Right? And I suppose the point I'm trying to make is give yourself a good amount of room to accept the fact that you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to fall in love with the wrong people. You're going to take the wrong classes. You're going to get the wrong jobs. You're going to have the wrong kids. You're going to speak in all the wrong ways, behave in all the awful ways. And then at a certain point, if you have the awareness, you'll catch yourself. And then you'll fix certain parts of the way you think and the way you feel. And from that point on, hopefully, If you've been baptized the right way by your own intellect and reflections, you'll make the right decisions. You can't survive. I mean, you can't live a healthy life without sinning. It's impossible. But sometimes, because you have parents, sometimes when you just do stupid things, it impacts your parents as well. And it has a ripple effect. And then your father will talk to you only to realize that, your head is filled with concrete, so he gets angry with you. And then he takes his anger on your mom. And then all of a sudden you have created the friction or conflict between your mom and your dad. Then they begin the screaming match. And then your father ends up on the sofa. And then just things become from bad to worse. And then 2 or 3 months later, your mom says, I'm divorcing. Your dad will tell you that he's divorcing your mom. And I say this because we've had friends. We had a guy who was in the military. His son was just wasn't listening. And so he tried to discipline him. The mother said, you're a bit too harsh. He said, screw you. I'll do what I need to do to make sure that this kid doesn't end up in prison. And eventually they divorced. So just because you sin, it doesn't mean that just it's all on you. It impacts other people. And it sucks to be a parent, because you have to sit back and watch your kids just be stupid for the first 60 years. Danielle. Oh wait, Elsa, you had something.
Oh, I was gonna ask, in regards to the Adam and Eve move and the tragedy of life. Does it matter symbolically where Lilith came from, and specifically does it inform her darkness symbolism?
So if I was to kind of be creative with the story, let me just say Lilith, Layla, Lilia, Lillian, Delilah. The root word, Lil, it basically means darkness. Okay. Now let me kind of I'm just going to create a story, all right? Now, one of the most important things that all of us in this class desire in life is power. It's perhaps the single most important thing that you and I want. It's because of power you're able to take a shower in the morning and have plans to come to school, have a job. That gives you a tremendous amount of power. You know how your day is going to unfold. And just in case you come to this class and I make you feel bad, you'll pack up your stuff and you leave. Because now you have the power to say, I don't care for the grade, I don't care for this class, I don't care what he says. That's a tremendous amount of power for you to have. If on the other hand, you only needed this class and this class alone to graduate from Laney, and you needed to graduate from Laney because next semester you have a scholarship. If you miss it, that's it. That's the end of the road for you. You come to this class, I harass you. And you have all these negative emotions coming inside you. But you don't know what to do with them. You can't express them. And even if you report me to my dean, what can they do? Slap me on my wrist a couple of times, right? And I'll be a bit more gentle, but I'll still continue to harass you. You have no power over me. You have no power over this environment. And you have certainly no power over your emotions, which means that when the class ends, you can't just leave your emotions in this class and walk away. You're going to take these emotions to your friends, to your job, to your customers, and eventually get fired. Okay? So as long as you have power, you can make plans. As long as you have power, you live in light. You know where you're going, what you're doing. Okay? Imagine now for a moment that you're a single woman, okay? You have no companionship, no one owns you, no one has power over you. Your emotions belong to you. Let's say you fall in love with someone and you have no idea if they love you back or they feel the same way about you. Well, you come to this class, you can't focus. Okay? You want to know if they feel the same way about you, but you can't really know. And even they say, I love you, you can't really believe that. Okay? And all of a sudden you realize you now suffer from the psychological darkness, Lilith. You have this set of emotions coming to you and your rationality will come down. You want to try to figure this out, but you can't figure it out. It's like people who are depressed, or like people who are in love, or people who are suffering some loss or grief. The emotions are so intense that your rationality, your reason, they don't do anything. They can't do anything. They have no power. And so the moment you lose power, what you'll do is you'll try to make some adjustments to gain some of your power back. If you're able to get your power back, you will end up in the Garden of Eden. You still have power, okay? If you don't, what will happen is you're slightly agitated because you keep trying and you keep failing. And then you become really irritated. Then you keep trying and you keep failing. Then you get frustrated. And these are like emotions that become more and more intense, okay? And then you realize you're really frustrated now. And then you say, you know, I've used all the tools I have in my toolbox and I can't figure out this nonsense. Then you get confused. And confusion brings about a good amount of anger. And then at a certain point, you grab like these plates and bowls that you have in your house, just bang them on the floor. Now you're enraged. That's what Lilith does. Lilith creates a good amount of psychological, intellectual confusion. You know, and all of us in this class have experienced this. It doesn't need to be philosophical. It doesn't need to be spiritual. You know, you just go to work one day and your boss looks at you and says, my budget has been cut. I can't afford you anymore. You know, you're fired. You say, what? My rent is due like in a couple of weeks. How am I going to like do life? I'm sorry, I can't do much. You know, and so all of us have suffered from Lilith at some point in our lives. Now, the nice thing about the sort of Lilith or darkness that all of us in this class experience is that they're all temporary. They force us into seclusion and confusion and anger for about maybe a day, maybe a week, maybe a month, maybe 2 months. While we are in it, the assumption is, you know, this grief is never going to go away. My anger is not going to go away. It's never going to go away. I'm going to be paralyzed for the rest of my life. And lo and behold, 2 months later, you realize you don't really care about that at all. Okay. Sometimes you have a sort of confusion that is... Can I tell you a story? Sure. How many in this class have heard of this actor named Gene Hackman? Good. So they did this interview with him. He was about 71, if I'm not mistaken, or 75.
Hugh Jackman. He died of.
No, not Hugh Jack, not the Wolverine, the other guy. Yeah. So he was in this like actor's studio, and the interviewer asked him, we're at this part of our show where we talk about our parents, and how it feels when we lose them. And so he looks at Gene and says, so you lost your father at a young age. How old were you? And Gene says, well, I think I was about 13. Oh, how did it happen? Well, I was just playing with some guys down the street, and he just drive by and he says, bye, son. And what was interesting about that particular segment in the show is that this is almost a 60 or a 75-year-old man. He chokes up. He gets teary-eyed. And he becomes completely quiet. And his answers to all of the interviewer's questions are very, very, very short, because now he has no power to control his emotions. And then to hide all the things, all the ways he's feeling, he looks at the audience and he says, you know, this only happened 65 years ago. So I'm still recovering from it. Okay. And the point I'm trying to make is sometimes you have certain events happen to you and they create a great amount of confusion, especially during the formative years, from the age 0 to about maybe 14, 15, 16, where there is an event that just like goes inside your soul and it's never going to leave. And what you and I will do if those events happen is that you will try for the next like 60 years of your life to find distractions, sometimes healthy, sometimes unhealthy distractions. But the interesting thing about life is that once in a while, life creates an event, and that event goes exactly to that memory file, that experience that you tried to never be around. And once that event hits that memory file, the file opens and the story comes out and all the emotions ooze out of it. And now you say, man, I thought I'm completely over the loss of my father, but I guess I'm not. Okay. If you run into someone like a Jesus Christ, or a Malcolm X, or a Socrates, there's a good chance that your Lilith, your darkness and confusion, is going to stay with you for your entire life. But that's very rare. So what you have in the story Adam, and I'm making these stories very like superficial and cheesy and cheap. So Adam happens to be just your flesh, the world of Caesar. You know, Safeway and classes and sex and drinking and having fun with your friends. That's Adam. There is a part in us that once in a while says, you know, all I'm doing is like, it's fun, there's nothing wrong with it, but I want something more. And if you've been in a long-term relationship, and that's one of the nice things about long-term relationships, everything about your life is good. You know, once in a while you just look at your companion and you say, yeah, but I just don't feel anything. There is something in us that demands and desires to come to life, to find meaning in the meaningless, sacred in the secular, something profound in the profane, you know. And so what happens when this force becomes more and more intense, it makes your life as Adam kind of cheap and meaningless. You're no longer satisfied with having a companion and sharing a room or a house. You want meaning, you want passion. And when you can't find it, you will do whatever you can to destroy the relationship. So in some ways you could argue that if you're a human being, you're condemned never to be happy, because there is something inside us that longs and yearns for something that life can't give you. So am I saying that we as human beings are screwed? I think so.
How do you cope with anxiety or fear about the future? Like what your future holds?
First, I don't know if we were created by God or we are basically freaks of nature. That certain things came together and here you and I are, okay? Now, if you look at the world, imagine you're driving somewhere in Oakland and it's say 1:30 in the morning and the light on the dashboard comes on because you're running out of gas. And there is a gas station just down the street and you can see it. But as you're driving, you realize there are people walking with guns, there are people walking with baseball bats, and there are people walking with knives. But they desperately need gas. You certainly don't want to get stuck there. So you drive into the gas station. Are you going to feel anxious? Are you going to be fearful? If you don't have anxiety and if you don't have fear, you must be stupid, or there must be something wrong with your brain. Because what these two components will do for you is, Danielle, when you're driving to the gas station, be cautious, pay attention, don't trust anything. And what anxiety and fear are doing for you are telling you the world is dangerous. Pay attention. There is a good chance that bread, the price of bread or eggs could jump to $20. Go to Trader Joe's. Especially if you know that you're an athlete and like Sylvester Stallone, you have to kind of shove down your throat like 50 eggs a day. That's your diet. And in the absence of having eggs, well, what you have is anxiety. So what do you do to prevent anxiety to overtake you? Well, you go to Trader Joe's and you buy all the eggs that they have. Greed is good. Okay. Now, you can have anxiety linked to certain facts of life, or you could have anxiety because it's part of your imaginative life. Shakespeare has all these plays where this woman loves this man. I mean, she really, really, really loves him. But he has streaks of jealousy inside him. That she's going to leave him, she's going to be with other men. So what he does, because he becomes so anxious, okay, and so fearful of this woman leaving him, one night when she sleeps, he grabs a knife and slits her throat. If I kill her, she will never leave me. Okay. So, if you have imaginations that create anxiety, what we call panic attacks, then that's something, I suppose, maybe your brain chemistry is kind of off a little. Maybe drugs can help you. Maybe you need therapy. Maybe someone needs to slap some reality into your brain. If, on the other hand, your anxiety really has to do with facts of life, okay? If you live in Texas, and if that is your skin color, and if you don't look white American the way they look in Texas, you should be anxious when you walk the streets. You should be fearful. And it's not just about you, because your anxiety allows your parents to also be comfortable. They know that their son is going to go out, they're going to come home, he's going to come home. If you're married, your wife knows that she's still going to have a husband. Your kids know that they're still going to have a father coming home. Without anxiety, it's no good. There is this rare type of a disease where some kids just don't feel pain. They just don't feel pain. So you can grab a hammer and smack them on the wrist, they won't feel anything. You can put their hand under a saw and cut their wrist, they won't feel anything. And oftentimes they pull their hair, they bite their own tongue to the point that it's going to just be cut off. And so what parents do is they put like goggles, they put gloves, because without fear or without experiencing pain, you jeopardize your own demise. So anxiety is really, really good. You should be, as a young man, anxious about what your grade will be in this class. Why? If it's a C, you won't get accepted to Stanford. If it's an A, you will be. A person of color like you, from a different heritage, in a country such as this, where at any time you could be canned, anxiety will save and protect you. There's nothing wrong with it. If I ask you what's 2 plus 2, what's the answer?
4.
You don't have anxiety about that? You don't have any fear of being wrong? Future is always going to be uncertain. If I was to ask you what's 5,525 times 988, what's the answer? There you go. So whenever you are confronted with things you don't know, there goes your power. 2 plus 2 is easy. You have the power. You've been trained well. But the other equation, you have zero power, which means that just in case you're an introvert, you are shy, you have anxiety when it comes to public speaking, when you can't give me the answer, you say, oh my God, 40 people are looking at me. I knew I was dumb, but now I really feel dumb. Now anxiety comes about. So anxiety and fear are indication that you don't really have a lot of power over your physical environment. And what you'll do is you kind of look at the environment, you say, okay, can I be in the ring with Mike Tyson, go 12 rounds? You say no. That's a good fear and anxiety to have because you studied, okay? If on the other hand, you're in a ring with your grandmother, there is no anxiety. The only thing you fear is, I will punch you, just not too hard. And remember, in life, you're always going to be put in situations where we have zero power. You'll be anxious, you'll be frustrated, you'll be confused, you'll be angry. The best thing any of you in this class can do, stay in school. Erica. Adrian. Right? Anything? Erica.
Just having
Children.
having a passion, just being strong. What do you think of passion?
Compassion or passion? Say your question again.
Do you think being a person like in this world is worth, like, should you even bother having compassion? Is it just a weakness to even have it?
There is a part in us that's very instinctual, that you see someone who's homeless, for some strange reason, they bring about a lot of emotions inside you, and you say, you know, I'm going to go to Costco, buy some chicken, you know, and they have one that's like $5, they have another one that's like $12, and depending on your budget, you just say, I'm just going to buy one and give it to them. Or you'll just kind of fork out $20 and give it to them. That's a reaction to a very empathetical emotion that just lives inside us. Something happens to us at the sight of pain when another person is in pain. Okay, it happens automatically. There is also this other part in us that's very calculative, very transactional, and there is nothing wrong with it. That you say, I want to help this person, but I want to make sure that there is a thank you after I help. And you look at the environment, you look at the psyche of the person, and you are helpful once, but there is no thank you coming your way. You're helpful the second time, there is no thank you, coming your way. The third time, where they ask for your help, you say no. And something has happened because you're beginning to value, for the right or the wrong reasons, the things you're offering to another human being. I'm not the Buddha, I'm not Jesus Christ. I'm not going to say, I'm going to do things and I expect no rewards. I expect nothing in return. No. If I'm going to pay for your school, I need to see that you have gotten A's in all of your classes. Anything lower than an A, I'm not going to pay for your school. Okay. So, and I think we have to live in both worlds, and they just both happen to us. And it also depends what exactly it is that you're giving. Giving money is easy. Giving your ears to someone because they want to gossip or they want to lament, or you feel like you're a therapist, up to a certain point in your life, that's also very easy to do. Then you move into a different stage of your life where it's much easier to give money than to give your time. Much easier to give money than to give your energy. Okay? And eventually you'll come to a point where you say, I'm not giving my money, I'm not giving my time, I'm not giving my energy unless I know who this person is and unless I know exactly what they're going to do with the things I'm going to give them. And these are all stages we go through, you know. And remember, Jesus was a young guy. I mean, if you like to kind of that particular tradition, he began his ministry at the age of 30 and he ended at the age of 33. 3 years of experience is nothing. So most of the things that he said, it's like a 2-year-old telling you, I love you. Zero understanding. Matthew.
Why are we so resistant why are we so resistant to accepting help from others? Even people who are close to companionship with will still be resistant to accept their help.
I don't know the answer. Your question just reminded me of, there is this, I think he's maybe 40, this young homeless man. He's white, blonde hair, sky blue eyes. He's such a beautiful man. And there is something very serene, very quiet, very calm about him. And for the past maybe 15 years, every time I run into him, something happens to me and I don't know what it is. I don't say, can I buy you food? I always say, will you let me buy you something? And he always says no. And inside my head, I have created this narrative that he's like this sociologist from like Nebraska, and he's doing some research in Oakland. And, you know, he dresses in a certain way and he looks a certain way. And he approaches people in a certain body language. And then at night when no one's around, he goes to his like home and writes everything down. First, I think some of you in this class are failing this class. You haven't done much work. You come to class, you sleep. But there is something about you that says, don't go to his office. Don't approach him. Don't ask him about your grade. Don't ask him for help. I think we have this pride that lives inside us. And this pride gives you value, gives you meaning. It sustains you as a human being. That I'm not going to go to him and cheapen myself for a C or a B or an A. I'm not going to do any of that. Okay? So there is something about us that makes sure that I guess you have still some faith about you and inside you, about yourself, which keeps you from seeking help. There are cultural elements where, and we've talked about this before perhaps in other classes, that in certain cultures, such as the culture that lives in Texas, asking help is beneath you. And men are far worse in asking help than women are. If you're like driving around looking for a place and you have no idea where it is, how to find it, and your companion, your woman, looks and says, God damn it, roll down the window, ask that idiot out there. No, I can find it. And 20 hours pass by, and eventually she kind of opens the door and says, I'm leaving you. You suck, Women, on the other hand, they're like cougars. They roll down the window, grab someone by the throat, tell me where this person is. If you don't, or this place is. If you don't, I will just choke you to death. The other aspect about not wanting help is autonomy. Sometimes as I'm leaving the classroom, like my pen folds or my something folds, and Abi says, Amir, let me pick it up. Right? And in my head I say, oh, she's looking at me and she's saying, an old man who can't bend over, arthritis, his arm is this, and he just had a triple bypass. You know, he's about to die. Let me do what I can for him. When in fact, you know, I have a good amount of power still. I can bend over myself. I can pick up things myself. So the moment you realize you're far too weak to do anything about your condition, you kind of lose parts of your autonomy, your independence, and that's devastating. It's something that the Greek playwright poet by the name of Sophocles had mentioned to us some 3,000 years ago, that this man by the name of King Oedipus is walking to his town, but before getting into it, or before allowed in, there's a sphinx, this character who looks at him and says, before I let you in, you have to kind of tell me what this puzzle really means. The sort of animal that walks on four, and then walks on two, and then walks on three, walks on four during the morning time, walks on two during the afternoon time, and walks on three during the evening time. What is that? And Oedipus says, well, it's the human being, you know, that when you're born, you walk on your hands and feet. When you get to be our age, you walk on your 2 feet and you have a good amount of power and health. And then you get a little older. And then you realize your 2 feet are not enough. You need an extra one, 3. And there comes a point where you realize you just need a wheelchair. And little by little, you realize life just takes your independence and your autonomy away from you to the point where you can't do much of anything. I don't know, I used to work for hospice and child life services. The hospice is about people who are near the end of their lives. I did that for about 7 years. And child life services, where you have these kids who really haven't had much time to kind of live their life. At the age of like 4 or 5 or 2 or 3, they're diagnosed with cancer or some incurable disease, and they're just laying flat on bed. And what you realize is that sometimes just the ability of chewing food gives them a tremendous amount of autonomy and value and meaning. I can't move my hands, I can't move my feet, I can't move my legs, I can't move anything, but I know how to chew. I still can do that. And the moment you try to do something for them, they say, no, I can do that myself. You know, there are moments where you don't ask for help because you're just stupid and young and arrogant. For those of you who are failing this class, and many of you are, send me an email. Come to my office. But you'll either forget, or you're far too casual, or you're just far too stupid. And so the outcome is just you're going to get an F. So people refuse help for all sorts of different reasons. But I think the most important ones is that you want to protect your autonomy. And it's important. You know, you want to figure out how to get out of grief by yourself, on your own. You read books. You know, so... Danielle.
So this is kind of relates with the last question I asked about anxiety.
Sorry?
Kind of relates with the last question I had a few minutes ago. But how do you define happiness and what role does it play in your life? Sorry to throw you a curveball.
No. It's just a very difficult question. First, The word happiness comes from hap. It means luck. It just happens. Now, sometimes you wake up, you just happen to be in a good mood. Whatever you touch turns into gold. Are you the creator of that? No, it just happens. Sometimes you wake up and you're in a foul mood and you want to fix your mood, but it's not possible. So you're just miserable. Okay? That's number one. The other is, there is this goddess that lives or lived in ancient Greece. Her name is Fortuna. Only she can decide if you're going to have a good day, a happy day, a joyous day or not. She could take your life. It's not really up to you. Your future, your emotions, the events that take place in your life, they have nothing to do with you. You're not in charge of any goddamn thing out there. Okay. Second, or third, or fourth, or fifth. We are pleasure-driven animals. From the moment you're born, you scream because you want your mom to hold you. You don't want money. You don't want a bicycle. You just want to be held by the person who grew you inside her, and that's your mom. Okay? At a different time, you don't care for your mom's embrace. What you care for are her breasts. You want milk. Okay? At a different stage, you scream at your dad because you don't want an embrace, you don't want a hug, you don't want milk. What you want is a bicycle. You want a bicycle, why? Because your friend Jackie has a bike, and you're jealous and envious, and you resent your friend having a bike, but you don't. And then you go to school, and then your best friend is in the same class. He gets an A, you get a C. You're miserable now. It's not a bike that you want, you just want the same grade, an A. And then a few years later, you realize that your best friend has a car, but you're still driving your bike. Okay. Years pass by, your best friend has graduated from, say, Stanford, and you're still a loser. And you say, you know what? I'm going to go back to school. It's not sex that you want, it's not drugs that you want a diploma. Years pass by, you see your friend holding hands with this person. See, I want a companion. Okay. Years pass by, you want marriage. Years pass by, you want children. Years pass by, you say, I want to be healthy. So you stop eating junk food. Years pass by, you say, oh, I want to figure out who the best doctor is at Kaiser. The point I suppose I'm trying to make is the following. At every stage in your life, your definition of what gives you pleasure changes. One of it has to do with your own psychological maturity, that something about you changes. If neurologists are right that every 7 years, your entire brain chemistry changes, okay? With the change of your brain chemistry also comes the change in your desires and passions and the sort of pleasures you want in your life. Second, it's what the culture provides you. If this culture says you need to be like Elon Musk, amass 40, 50 billion dollars in your savings account, well, that's your version of happiness. If on the other hand, you hang out with Jesus Christ or Socrates, happiness is how well you can think and feel. So a good amount of who and what you are really depends on your environment. If I was to tell you something very personal, I would say the following. I wanted to be a musician because I assumed that it would make me profoundly happy, as well as famous. I wanted to be a soccer player. I wanted to be a professional tennis player. But then I ran into a man named Hussein. He said, you know what? Screw all those things. Why don't you just go to school and do philosophy? And very much like you, I said, you know what? Okay, I'll go to school, I'll do philosophy, but I'm not going to teach because I don't like to be around people. I get nervous in public. Okay. You don't make very much money, and your life is to some extent very simple. But what you're around are ideas. And ideas, if you're around the right ones, they can make your life profoundly rich. And even though some of the ideas are quite painful, that they force you into reflection, and that reflection kind of pushes you into Lilith, darkness, confusion, irritation, you're still very happy. So again, the point is, it depends on so many different factors. Another example, my mom married at the age of 15. She married my dad who was 27, 28. And in that culture, you don't romanticize relationships. Your mom says, it's time for you to get married, and that's it. That's how the culture defined happiness. As a woman, you get married young. 6 months later, I come out. The idea of, well, I'm an independent woman, I want to go out there and figure out who I am, what I am, it doesn't exist. Happiness is, you get married when you're 15, 16, you have kids when you're 16 and a half, 17, you're a housewife, you're a mother, that's it. Here, the story is different. Oh no, I'm too young to be married, I just want to discover myself. What about yourself do you want to discover? There is nothing about you that needs discovering. Oh no, but I want to figure out who I am. Yeah, you have another 90 years to figure that out. And even when you do, you won't be happy. Okay? So, and you realize all of a sudden that happiness in Iran 50 years ago, very different than happiness in America. Okay? And even in Oakland, if you have parents who are pastors at a church versus a mother or a father who are CEOs to a company, if you ask the kids, they'll have a different definition of what happy is. Snoop Dogg can make you happy. So does, reading the dialogues of Plato. But Snoop Dogg is very easy. He's like a one-night stand. Yes. Yeah.
Do you think it's best to be content and exercise gratitude against your inherent nature to desire things? And if so, is that even possible? And how would you embark on that?
Well, that's just too many things. Can we just focus on contentment? Yeah. This cup can only hold a gallon of water. That's its capacity. Even if it desires 2 gallons, it's impossible. What it will eventually witness is 1 gallon, the extra gallon, is just going to overflow and go to waste. But this is something that you can see, you can touch, you can smell, you can taste. You know exactly how big it is. You don't know your capacity just yet. You haven't had a lot of experiences in life. You haven't been challenged yet. You don't know what your potentials are. You don't know what pleasures are going to come into your life and drive you towards a certain goal. You are at this stage a mystery to yourself. You should never be content. You should never be happy. Your life is going to be a struggle for the next 20, 30 years to figure things out, hopefully in a healthy way. You should not be content with having a high school diploma. You should never be content with going out with an 18-year-old punk, okay? You should never be content with any aspect of your life. Why? Because you're still growing. And as long as your brain is growing, as long as you're growing emotionally, as long as your foundation is filled with confusion, anxiety, fear, and things out that interest you, you should never rest. Rest comes to someone who says, you know what? I mean, look, I don't want to change my life anymore. I'm not here to inspire anyone. I'm here to have sex with ideas the best I can, go inside them, figure out what lives inside them, open them up, have fun with them, and then go home. I don't care if students don't like me. Those stages for me are past. I don't want to spend too much time with people. And not even Jesus Christ has the power to make me feel guilty. I know who I am. And I'm okay with my capacity. But that took me 62 years. You're 18. And as Shakespeare would say, the world is your stage and you just walked on the stage. And you don't have the scripts just yet. It's going to take you a long time to write your own story. In a culture such as this, privilege, infinite number of options, you have opportunities that most people under the sun don't have. Right? The only thing I would say is that because there are so many options, it could be that you hear the piano and that sound that comes out of this wooden box may inspire you. And you may go buy yourself a piano, find yourself a teacher, and start playing. But there is also rap. There is also hip hop. There is also Miley Cyrus. And all of a sudden you realize if your potential, if your capacity, your passion is about the piano, you have all these vultures now. They're also trying to occupy a certain amount of space inside you. Okay? And so you'll do 10 minutes of piano, 2 hours of Miley, 5 hours of Justin Bieber, and now you're 60 and you're not good at anything. Okay? I think most of us have no choice but to be the miserable animals that we've always been. First, to be happy, there's a lot of luck that needs to be involved. And I don't know where you go to find luck. Okay? Some people, they're just born to have a very positive temperament. My father, even if fire is coming from the heavens, says, oh, look, it's so beautiful. There is this gospel, I think it's the gospel of Barnabas, where Jesus is walking with his disciples, and there is this dog. It's dead. It stinks. And everybody, all the disciples say, oh, yuck, look at this dog. It's awful. And Jesus looks at him and says, but look at his teeth. They're so white. It's beautiful. And what you have is Jesus looks at the entirety of this dog, but only sees positive. All the disciples, they only see negative. Some people are just born to see positive. They're just very lucky. Some people are just born to see the negative, a cup being half full or half empty. That's luck. You can't make that shit up. It doesn't work that way. If your temperament is always seeing a cup half empty, don't allow these teachers out there to deceive you. That's who you are. Okay? But you won't be happy with that because other people will make you feel bad. This is not a culture that values pain and reflection and anxiety and fear and confusion with. This is a culture that says the moment you're 2, be happy with who you are. And you need to figure out who you are and what you want, what you're going to be for the next 90 years at the age of 2. Okay? And just in case you can, this culture has the power to make you feel like shit. Okay? Now, it's going to take you a long, long, long time to accept the fact that, you know what? I am just a half cup kind of a person. A cup is not half full, it's just fucking half empty. Okay? And by the time you get there, you have to get rid of a lot of cultural factors, a lot of social factors. So, as long as you're on this path towards self-discovery, world discovery, other people discovery, don't rest. There is no resting place for you. Once you have figured out what you're good at, and once you become really, really proficient, that's your Sabbath. Then you can rest. Allahu Akbar.
So I think in one of your videos you mentioned an anecdote of a man who made like an absorbent amount of like wealth and like just had everything he could possibly want, but at the end of the day he was still very discontent with his life or just miserable. And I'm wondering how you could lead a life in a way where you do get things that you want and you can make like practice happiness and positiveness in that so you don't end up fucking miserable even though you have everything.
No, I think everybody's miserable. And I'll tell you why. The way desire works. What time are we done?
In 2 minutes.
Okay, so the way things work usually, okay, and first of all, you have to be profoundly unreflective and stupid to say, I'm always going to be happy and positive. It doesn't work that way. So the way things work is, right now, this is you. Okay, and since you're a woman, let me give you a couple of horns. Now, okay, this is you. And you're minding your own business. Okay. All of a sudden, here, this is Jack. Okay. You look at Jack and you find yourself attracted to Jack. Okay. Let's say this attraction grows into a desire. Let's say desire turns into a want. I want Jack. Let's say want becomes emotional. I need Jack. The moment you have an emotional need for Jack, what you have is poverty on the inside. And poverty is a painful thing, especially if it's emotional. Okay? It's okay if you come to my office and say, Amir, I have cancer. I will feel bad for you. But I'm not going to go out there and find a remedy for your disease. If on the other hand, I have cancer, now I am in need of a remedy. Now I will do research. Okay? So whenever there is a need, you're emotionally entangled with the object of your desire. Okay? Then you make this journey. Now, whenever there is poverty, there is this desert. That without Jack, your life means nothing. Now your journey begins. The moment you make this journey, you become a political animal. How do I get him? What's his number? Where does he live? Eventually, so remember, at this stage, it's your journey towards the object of desire. Eventually, Jack looks at you, you look at Jack, you guys are in love. Oh, wait, don't celebrate just yet. Okay? You're in love. Now, what happens in love, now your journey begins. Journey into Jack. This is journey to Jack. This is journey in Jack. You guys have sex. You explore his body as he explores yours. You get to know his history. You guys hold hands. You have dinner. You have conversation. You watch movies. You become roommates. At a certain point, this desire is now satisfied. You no longer need him, but it's good to have him around. It's a place of saturation. Saturation. And when sometimes you say, Jack, I'm going to go for a walk. Can I come with you? No. I don't want to be around you. Now you want your time alone. Okay. The moment your desire is satisfied and you're saturated, boredom sets in. The moment you become bored, you become unhappy. This is your GPS for the next 60 years. The only thing you can do is go from one desire to another. As long as you're able to distract yourself, you'll be really, really, really good. When you come to a place where there are no desires to be had because everything is so goddamn fucked, then you say, life is not worth living. Now you look for a Socrates, or a Jesus Christ, or a Malcolm X. But I must say, women are very, very lucky because you have the power to get pregnant and have children. And children will create distraction for the next 90 years. And children have a tendency of just wearing you out psychologically. By the time you get 30, you say, you know what, I just want to sit and watch TV for the rest of my life. Welcome to the Matrix. It's good to see all of you. Take care.
You know when you said Texas